Welcome to the Marketing Your Veteran-Owned Business panel at the 2021 Veterans Florida Virtual Expo presented by Bank of America. I'm Dan Barrow, the Communications and Marketing Director here at Veterans Florida. We got a great lineup of panelists today to give you their insights on marketing your veteran-owned business to the best degree you can. So now I think we'll turn it over to Neil Marr at Learning Alliance Corporation to introduce himself.
Hi, I'm Neil Marr. I'm the Director of Marketing for Learning Alliance Corporation. We are a telecom-based trade school. We teach veterans and non-veterans, but we specialize in veterans, all kinds of telecommunications technologies, tower climbing, fiber optic, structured wiring, to kind of run the whole gamut. We have in-classroom training that we do almost a boot camp scenario where we bring students in, train them up, get them job placed, and get them in the workforce as soon as possible.
All right, Lucille, you want to go?
Sure. So I'm Lucille Spahn. I am the owner of Blaze Digital Services, which is a boutique digital marketing agency. I'm headquartered here in Tallahassee, but we do digital marketing for clients throughout the US. Prior to founding Blaze Digital, I worked as the marketing director at Joe Manassa Real Estate, which is a local brokerage here in Tallahassee, the FSU Alumni Association, and then also spent 6 years at Visit Florida, which is the tourism board for the state, doing marketing and communications for them as well. So if you're not sort of familiar with what a boutique marketing firm does, then what makes it a little different is we pride ourselves in not doing everything. We focus on a few things that we do really well. We primarily, all of our clients are nonprofit organizations or startups in tech and IT, and we come in, we partner with them to come up with a marketing plan, an annual marketing plan and strategy that will work for them to help them build and grow their business. Excellent.
Lucille, I didn't know you had been at Joe Manassa. You left a great legacy there. They got quite the presence in the Tallahassee advertising market.
Oh, well, thank you. Yeah, they have got a great team over there, and obviously veteran owned. So yeah, Joe has got definitely an awesome top-notch marketing program.
Awesome. Well, we're glad to have everybody here. Our entrepreneurship program really runs the gamut of just idea phase startups to growth phase and CEO mindset. So we're going to start with the basics of marketing a small or brand new company, and then we're going to move on to some of the bigger topics like industry trends and how and when to hire agencies. So Lucille, let's go to you first. What are some free or inexpensive tools or resources that an entrepreneur can use to establish their online presence when they're kind of just getting started and getting their visibility out there?
Sure. So I would always start with the website, because that is where your online presence really exists. And so one of the things that I always recommend clients do, or you can do yourself, is to run an audit of your website and make sure that not only do you have an SSL certificate, and is it mobile friendly, but also look at some of the other components, like, are you ranking for the keywords that you want to be ranking for, that kind of thing. And so one of the free tools, there's a free version and then you can get a paid version as well. But it's neilpatel.com. He has, it's called an SEO analyzer, and you can enter your website URL, and then it's going to spit out a report that tells you exactly what's going on with your website. It gives you an audit, and then it gives you sort of step-by-step guides so that you can go in and fix and correct those things. Because before you start running like paid ads or anything like that, you want to make sure that the place that you're sending people to actually is functioning properly. Another great tool, if you're looking sort of to get into the blogging world, would be answerthepublic.com. That's one that I would recommend, also free. And what that does is you go in, you put in a keyword, and it spits out like 100 to 1,000 questions that people are searching for in real time around that keyword. So that's going to help you come up with really good prompts and really good topic ideas as you're sort of putting together your blogging strategy. A tool that is not free, but that I would recommend, is a social media scheduling tool. So if you do have a social media component to your business, then I would recommend starting out with loomly.com. Some other tools that you may have heard of that are similar would be Hootsuite or Sprout Social. Sprout Social is a lot more expensive than Loomly, which is why for a startup, I would recommend Loomly. Of course, if you don't have any budget, then I would recommend Facebook publishing tools. So you'll be able to pre-schedule, I think it's up to like 3 months, posts through Facebook and Instagram. For graphic design, I would recommend Canva as a tool. A lot of people know it. I've tried a lot. It's the one I would recommend. It's super easy. You can also order print materials off of their website pretty quickly once you sort of mock up if you have like brochures or sales sheets, or I order my business cards from there. And then Linktree would be what I would recommend as far as like online and expensive tools for Instagram. That allows you, if you don't have a lot of followers when you're starting out on Instagram, you only get that one link in your bio, and that allows you to actually list multiple links instead of just that one. So, you can tell people, oh, visit the link in my bio. Now they can contact you, they can get a free demo, they can learn more about your organization, or they can book a consultation call. And then the fourth and final, not free, but for online, there's a lot of options out there for building websites. I prefer WordPress. The easiest one to sort of, if you're going to kind of take like a do-it-yourself approach, I would say is get the WP Astra theme and then use Elementor as the plugin to build your website off of it. To me, that's the most easy and straightforward one. WordPress has been around forever, and they also, it's great with SEO. That's not to say that, like a Wix can't do, or a Squarespace can't do what you want it to do. That's just the ones that I like and that I've had the best experience with. As far as if I do run into a problem or need to troubleshoot something, there's so many resources and people out there that are familiar that can help you if you get stuck.
Awesome. Well, yeah, there's some great advice there, especially on the SEO side of things. When they make it so easy to rank high, and for a low cost or free, it's that really cuts out a lot of the other legwork. Neil, maybe we could start with that question, but also jumping down, maybe some like that plus some best practices or first steps that an entrepreneur might want to take in terms of building their presence, but also identifying markets or channels they want to invest in, so they're reaching the people on the right platforms at the right times.
Absolutely. First of all, I'll like parrot a lot of what Lucille just said. I'm a big Neil Patel fan. I'm also a big WordPress fan. I'm a big fan of CRM also in general. So on top of WordPress has a lot of really good integrations that you can get. And I'm a big fan of kind of putting everything all in one spot because it makes things easier to manage. So you can use a lot of add-ons and plugins for WordPress where you can do Monster Insights to monitor Google Analytics, which I think is an account that everyone should have immediately. And also you can do HubSpot and MailChimp integrations directly with WordPress also. And then all the little pieces end up playing together very, very well. You can have contact us forms, you can have chat boxes, you can have statistics on all your blogs and information pages, and it's all really in one spot. One of the difficult parts for a startup, especially if they're not a technical startup, is kind of information overload. So if you can get a WordPress site set up and have integrations done, it puts everything all in one box and it makes things a lot easier to manage moving forward. You can do mailing lists and forms and all that kind of stuff all for you. I'm also a big fan of automations. A lot of the CRMs, HubSpot and WordPress will allow you to do automations. So if you're a small team, it'll allow you to automatically reply to emails and lists and activities that your users are doing to kind of save you a little bit of time. Another place, if you're looking for ideas, the design work a lot of times is the hard part or the expensive part for a small team. There's a really great website called Envato that has Graphic River and Theme Forest as kind of underneath. And they have lots of themes for WordPress, but on the other side, they also have logo design ability and and letterhead and design for flyers and such. And you can outsource all of that, obviously, or to an ad agency or to an outsourcer, but you're going to spend a lot of money. And early on in the process, that's probably not a great way to spend your money. So for $40, you can get a flyer and tweak it yourself, as opposed to spending thousands of dollars maybe to have a designer do it for you. As far as what was the second question that you were asking there?
Kind of identifying markets and what platforms to invest in and really establish a presence versus knowing where maybe your customers your target market isn't going to be.
Gotcha. For me, to kind of take a slight step back from that, to me, the first step in all of this is a marketing plan. But before, it doesn't even really matter the size of the business, or whether it's a tiny little startup or it's a large organization. You have to know, really, and it sounds very basic, but you have to know what you are and what you're selling and who you're selling it to. And until you know those things, I mean, you could have the largest marketing budget in the world, but you're not going to be successful. And you can start running day one and throwing money in every Facebook and Instagram and Twitter and LinkedIn campaign that you can find. But really, until you know what your product is and who you want to buy it, you're just going to spin your tires. So part of that process is to look at the marketplace. What are your competitors doing? Likely, unless you're doing something that's just completely revolutionary, likely there's someone out there who's at least similar to you. So it's a good time to take a slow step and see what everybody else in the space is doing. If they're focusing on LinkedIn, then there's probably a really good reason that they're focusing on LinkedIn over, say, Instagram. But if they're focusing on Instagram and there's like no Twitter activity for anyone in that space, well, that should tell you something also. So I'm a fan of experimenting and trying what other people aren't doing. But to me, that's like step two. If people are successful and they're in a space, they're in a space for a reason. And part of that market plan process is to figure out where the people who want to get your product, where they are.
Yeah, exactly. It's a common example I use is, if I'm selling running shoes, I probably don't need to be on a B2B platform like LinkedIn. And if I'm selling cloud storage, Instagram is probably not my spot to be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, Lucille, I didn't mean to cut you off. Did you have something to say?
You're good. So I was just gonna, I completely agree with what you're saying, Neil. And just to add on to that, I think especially in small businesses and in startups, they kind of forget that target audience component and understanding who it is that they're going after. And all the marketing in the world will not help overcome not understanding who your audience is. And so, that goes beyond understanding like their age, sex, location. So whatever research you can get, whether that's like a quantifiable or even sort of like qualitative data when you're starting out, is going to be so useful and so helpful. And that can be something as informal as like you calling 10 clients that you've worked with and having a conversation with them. Like, I think people get so overwhelmed in like the data. And it can really bog you down, and you can think, oh, I'm never going to be able to go through this. Like, there's so many steps to an audience persona. And then because you're scared, you just stick with, age, sex, location. But just calling and having a conversation with 5 or 10 people that are good, loyal customers or who have bought from you in the past, and getting things like, what do they like? What books do they read? Not necessarily anything to do with your product, but like all of that information, that is what really helps and informs when you're building an audience on Facebook or when you're building digital ads. Because if you can get that base, you're going to be able to get a pretty decent, like cost per click, cost per landing page view, cost per video view. And then you can expand from there, and you can do retargeting or lookalike audiences or anything like that. But really understanding who that target audience is first that you're trying to reach, and more of those, like I said, qualitative factors will be very valuable. So I would say, put together a little SurveyMonkey survey or a Google Forms survey, like get whatever data you can. And yeah, it's not going to be like perfect, but it's better to start with something than to start with nothing and then be spending all of this money running ads and not hitting your audience.
Yeah, I would chime in on that. I'm a really, really big fan of surveys. MailChimp, SurveyMonkey, like you said, Google Forms, all of those things. They're not necessarily a day one piece because you have to have someone to talk to. I know the service, SurveyMonkey specifically, you can actually pay. It's not a huge amount of money, but you can pay some, and they'll actually do some demographic work for you and push your surveys into specific groups. And it lets you get that information. Unless you know your audience, then you're just throwing stuff against the wall. And for the most part, especially nowadays, word of mouth is so big, reviews are so big. And the interesting part of that is people genuinely like to participate. There's a large number of people who they want to do surveys. They enjoy giving reviews. So getting those questions out in front of people is easier than it has ever been, really. And really, it's very important.
Speaking of throwing money at the wall, what are some common pitfalls that you all have seen small businesses make when they're really trying to make their first splash or just establish their presence?
Neil, do you want to go first or you want me to take it?
Well, it's kind of the obvious stuff in a lot of times. And a lot of it goes back to the business plan and the marketing plan. If you don't know how to reach people that are your audience, that are your customers, you can spend a lot of money in the wrong spot very, very, very easily. And it's kind of what I mentioned earlier, so some of the outsource, in-source questions. I've known people who have spent a lot of money on print ads, for instance, and get them outsourced, get an outside developer, get an ad agency or something to build those ads and get them mailed out. And in today's digital world, get them sent out digitally. And if it's not your target audience, it's not doing you any good. If the messaging isn't there, it's not doing you any good. And a lot of times that's just so important to get the right message in front of the right people and to not spend too much time roading your wheels. One big difficult part when it comes to, do I want to do something myself or do I want to insource or outsource or go to an ad agency? Time is everything. And the one thing that's kind of a commonality among, it doesn't really matter what your ad is, whether it's an email ad or a banner ad or social post or a blog or it's trying to get SEO, writing's not easy. And someone has to write that ad copy. And I've seen people, go to a designer and they get a really beautiful banner / flyer / landing page, whatever that media is. And then the words on the page just aren't good. And so they spent a lot of money on a nice, pretty graphic that looks like something really, really nice. But the words a lot of time are the hard part. And a lot of times the words that are on that screen aren't given the focus that they really should be, because once somebody glances at the screen and like, oh, that's really pretty, what are they trying to tell me? That's where it becomes difficult to figure out what the message is.
So kind of in my experience, what I've seen a lot as far as like pitfalls when businesses are starting out is they feel overwhelmed because it's a small business. You're putting like 50, 60, 80 hours a week into it. And so you want to like react really quickly and bring somebody on board to help so that it can alleviate some of that work. But either you don't have the plan in place, which is kind of what Neil was saying, that strategy so that you can direct that person, whether that's an in-house person or if you're outsourcing to an agency properly, or you don't have the budget to actually fulfill what it is that you're trying to accomplish. And so then you bring someone on and you need all of these things done, but you only have the budget to get this one thing done. So then that person, that agency or that in-house marketing person is focusing on that one little thing, okay, well, I know I need a new website and I know I need a landing page and I know I need a lead magnet, but I can't afford any of that. So I'm going to pay you, to run Facebook ads. well, we're running Facebook ads and then you're not seeing results, you're not seeing conversions because all you can do is afford to pay for the Facebook ads. But you're sending them to a landing page that's crap, or you're sending them, they don't have a lead magnet that's any good, or, that kind of thing. And so that's what I see a lot is, when you're just starting out, you get so overwhelmed and you think I need help, but like, you don't take that step back and say, okay, what plan or what strategy can I put in place, or what budget do I need to be saving for, and setting aside for that help. And that's not just with marketing. It's, for me being a marketing agency, it's not the marketing, it's the issue. It's like the financing side of it, like having someone manage my QuickBooks. So like, what systems and processes when I started out could I put in place? How to do everything. So then that way, when I get to the point to where I don't want to be doing QuickBooks anymore and it's overwhelming, I can literally hand somebody a manual and say, here is how I've been doing my QuickBooks. Now I want you to do my QuickBooks. And as a professional QuickBooks person, maybe you can improve upon what I've already been doing. And so I think that that's one of the things that when you're starting out in any business, you're so busy trying to just like do it, that you're not really putting the systems and the processes and the infrastructure in place along the way, so that when you can afford to bring somebody on, it's productive.
Yeah, I was actually,
sorry, go ahead.
I was having a conversation with someone the other day, and they were saying, I keep boosting my Facebook posts, but I'm not getting any sales from it. And going back to Neil's point about having a marketing strategy is, it's not 50, 100, 200, $1,000 Facebook boost. There's and we're going to get to some of this later on, but it's the identifying your market, doing the prospecting and doing the retargeting. And to Lucille's point of, you don't have to do everything at once. It's okay to take a step back and develop a good strategy, and don't be overwhelmed. And just because your first 2 weeks of being on the air, being on Facebook ads or LinkedIn, you're not going to get those results right away. So, be patient. And another thing that I've seen a lot with some small businesses is they try to back their marketing strategy into something else they've seen. So, maybe they really want to be on Amazon. All right, well, Amazon has a lot of great features, but there are also a million other people that are also pros at making sure they're ranking really high and being in that Amazon buy box. And it sounds great to be on Amazon, but maybe Shopify is better for you, because Shopify is going to let you place that tracking code and do better retargeting, and not just rely on, maybe someone clicked away from your site to Amazon, maybe they didn't put anything in your cart, but it gives you, as Neil said, the Google Analytics, it plugs in so much better that you really get a lot better intelligence. So maybe you're not on Amazon right away, but you're getting quality sales and quality leads that you can make better decisions off of later on down the road.
Such a good point.
And it's also kind of realizing that marketing's not magic. It's not like a little magic box that you just sort of dump money on and then money comes out of it. And that's how it's treated a lot. I mentioned earlier, HubSpot. I'm a huge fan of HubSpot and their automations and all that, but I have a personal relationship with another company that I know kind of personally, and really early in their kind of gestation, they jumped into HubSpot. And there was probably, it was a good sized company. There were probably 30, 40 people in it. And they jumped in and they bought the HubSpot CRM with every bell and every whistle, because we're going to run our marketing through this and we're going to do whatever. And it literally ended up being tens and tens and tens of thousands of dollars of extra overhead that they just didn't need. But it seems like, we're going to have these great tools. And with these great tools, money is just going to fall from the sky. But someone has to use those tools. I mean, marketing is a job. Marketing is a full-time job. And as things become more technical, I mean, it's as kind of, counterintuitive as it sounds, things don't necessarily get easier, because now we have automation and scripts and things running that. You still have to manage all of that. And so just throwing money at the solution and getting the best tools in the universe, if someone's not managing those tools, you're not doing any good.
Yeah, there's that e-commerce fallacy that there's this spigot you walk up to and you turn it on, and all of a sudden you're selling 100 running shoes a day. It's hard work. Before we jump into some of the higher level agency and trend type topics, Lucille, was there something else you wanted to jump in with?
Not really. I think Neil, kind of just piggybacking off of what he said, someone's got to actually build out that CRM system, and beyond just setting up the CRM. Like, yeah, you could pay somebody at HubSpot or ActiveCampaign to do that for you, but you have to really think through the strategy of what you're trying to accomplish. So you build this funnel. Where do those leads go? What does the follow-up process look like? Do they get a text, or do they get an email, or do they get both? How many days between times they've been on the website before you retarget? All of that strategy kind of thing has to be thought through. So yes, it's easier now than it ever was before, but at the same time, there's a lot more like strategy and thought that has to go into the process. Whereas before, it might have just been, oh yeah, like let's create a brochure or hang a sign on the window. And it's just not, it's evolved so much beyond that. So many specialties too, I think. That's actually something that I think is important to mention. Depending on the type of business that you're and what your natural sort of strengths are, when you're starting up a business, you may be a very like strategy forward thinking person. And if you have a business plan, it's probably not going to be that much of a stretch for you to sit down and write a marketing plan. And if you have sort of that marketing plan and strategy built out, then it may be you hiring specialists in different marketing areas to implement that for you. You can get somebody who is a Google PPC expert, or somebody who is an expert on Amazon, to your point earlier. If you're not more of that big picture person or something, that's when your money would be better and more wisely spent hiring a marketing consultant or a business consultant or a strategist to sit down with you, help you build that out so that you can identify, what things you need to outsource versus what things that you can do in-house. And that's another sort of like pitfall that I've seen, businesses is they hire a specialist when really they need more of like a big picture strategy person, or vice versa. They spend all of this money hiring this marketing firm because they think, oh, they're going to come up with this plan and then implement it. And they come up with the plan, but then it's not being implemented. Those can be very different roles. And it's really important when you're looking for a marketing or advertising agency to partner with to understand, like, are they a planning and strategizing? Are they an implementation? Or do they do both? Depending on what it is that you need.
Absolutely. And we're gonna head over to the kind of vetting and choosing agencies here in a second, but I just wanted to throw out there that there are also a plethora of resources if you do have the time and the bandwidth to take the dive and learn marketing. There's so many resources. Facebook has their mini online college that actually issues certificates. Lucy, Neil, I'm sure you're familiar with those as well. I got a certificate from Facebook a while ago. Google Analytics has courses you can go through and these are all free. Facebook charges you for the actual for the certificate. And there are other places you can go to take classes to learn. General Assembly is one of them. I've been through their courses, and there's dozens others where you can really spend a week of in-depth just learning the ins and outs. And they're not all very inexpensive, and it might take a week or two of your time, but they can definitely pay dividends down the line. So moving on to the choosing and vetting agency side of things, Neil, let's start with you. When a company wants to hire an agency, what are some things they should be looking for, and what are some things that they should be, so maybe some vetting processes they might want to take?
When you're looking at a specific ad agency, I always start with what is their experience in the sector that I'm going to be targeting. A lot of agencies target kind of specific sectors or specialize in specific sectors. They might say that, we go with, whoever, but really they're going to have success plans in specific, whether it's an IT startup or it's an educational startup, or it's maybe it's a food truck, whatever that stage is, people are going to have very specific success stories. Once you kind of target, okay, these are the 5 or 6 people that seem to work well in my sector, then personally, before I actually contact them, I do research. Let me see, what they've done. Let me see what ads. Let me see who they're supporting. Let me see what, if it's a website. Let me see what web presences that they've built. Let me see what Facebook presences that they are helping to power behind the scenes. I can do a lot of that data collection without being in the middle of a strong sales pitch. And sometimes that can make that easier. At that point, you're going to probably get narrowed it down to, okay, now I have whatever that number is. Say I have 5 now that I liked the creative that I've seen historically, and that seems to work well in my space. At that point, you're going to find, and Lucille can speak on this better, but at that point, you're going to find that all these agencies are all going to have their own set of services that they offer on their menu. And you'll be able to sort of know, well, I want that. I don't really care about flyer design, for instance, but I really want to target social. I need help on the website and the SEO side. So I need somebody who can help me write copy with keyword targeting and all that sort of stuff. But maybe I know I don't need to worry about Amazon because I'm not selling a physical good, maybe that sort of thing. So once you get narrowed down, it's like, I know I want these 5 companies that have success in my industry, and I know I like the creative of these 5 companies, or maybe it's 3 companies now. And now I can really go to, these are what the services that they all offer, and I can sort of narrow it back to which of those fit what my needs are.
That's great.
Those are some great points. Lucille?
Yeah, so just to kind of take it into the next step. So when you get to the point to where you're meeting with agencies, and this is something that I've experienced being within an agency, operating and working within an agency, and then also being the one vetting and hiring agencies, because that was a big part of my role when I was at Visit Florida. But the big thing is, who is the primary on the account, and do you like them? Also, if you can get any kind of information or data on like how long a person stays in that role. So depending on what size agency that you hire and that you work with, some of these bigger firms may have more capabilities, which is great. But what you may not see until you're working with them is now account executives are moving up, well, the good ones, every 8 to 12 months, and every 8 to 12 months, you're having to retrain somebody new. And so that is a problem. Like when you're working at a company and you're trying to move things forward, and it's like you never can get past that sort of beginning stage because there's so much turnover. And depending on what the skill is and what you're hiring for, once again, that may or may not matter, but it's something I think that you should be really aware of. And then also just like who you're meeting at that initial meeting may not be who you're working with. And so I think it's very clear to ask those questions and say, oh, okay, so when I call, will I be talking to Lucille, or will I be talking to Lucille's assistant, or will I be talking to Lucille's team member? Or, who's it going to be on sort of a day-to-day and week-to-week basis? Because that's the person that I want to talk to and get to know, is who's going to be there. It's very normal within agencies, obviously, that you would have like a lead and then an account exec, and your account exec may be great. Like that's not to say not everything that you do, you need to talk to the head person. It may be that the head person doesn't even know really what that technical specific aspect is, and the account exec is well versed in it. But just sort of knowing that so that you can be routing questions and routing, things efficiently, I think is really, really important, when you're sort of going through and vetting people.
And how many other accounts is Lucille working on at the time? Because, it's, they always have, many agencies always have time for the pitch, but when push comes to shove,
Then
you
you
want to
can't get
make sure
on the
that
phone,
person
you
is giving
can't.
you their undivided.
Yes, I mean, that's, so I jokingly talk with my team members and stuff that we refer to ourselves as the anti-agency agency, because I dealt with so much of that, that I'm like, I would much rather have a potential client, and I've done it, have a potential client to me, and I say, I'm sorry, I don't have the bandwidth. Like, I'm wrapping up projects. Maybe we can touch base in 3 months. I'd rather be very sad and tell somebody I really want to work with no at the time than to bring them on and then not be able to deliver. But not everybody is like that. And so, interview not just the person who's pitching, but the person you'll be working with, and make sure that it's somebody that you can have a good working relationship with. Also understanding and establishing things like, are you a 24/7 business? Are you working on the weekends? Like, is that agency? Is there somebody monitoring social over the weekends? If that's sort of your big thing, those are important, sort of working relationship things as well, because that can be very frustrating if you're starting a side business maybe, and you're doing most of your work between the hours of 4 p.m. and 11 p.m. and then you can't hear back until the hours of 9 to 4 or something like that. That's another thing to kind of make sure that as you're talking to people.
Yeah, to add a little
and go ahead.
Sorry, to add a tiny bit to that, kind of two things. When you're doing that vetting as far as quality control of what the agency can produce, make sure you're getting examples from the team that's going to be working with you, not just what that company in general can make. Because it doesn't matter if they have the best artist or writer or whatever in the universe, if that's not the lady or the man who's working with you, then it's immaterial. And then on the other side of that, I've had quite a bit of experience on some of the smaller outsourcing platforms, individual Upwork, Fiverr, that sort of thing. And in those cases, I've had really good examples given to me from, this is what we can do. And it's really kind of a shot, you're playing a game of roulette. What you're going to get from that random guy on Fiverr who, sure, he was only $40 or whatever, but you're kind of you're gambling when you get that. And even when you get something from that gentleman, a lot of times they're international. So their working schedules may or may not be very, very, very different than yours. I can say I've had some very, very good experience on Upwork and Fiverr also. And from a budgetary perspective, sometimes it's easier to start that way. I have outsourced small social media projects and content development projects to Upwork and Fiverr before. And as long as the vetting process works and the expectations are set very well at the beginning, you can do well. But you have to be a little bit skeptical, and you have to go into it, really digging to get the right information.
And I'm glad you brought up Fiverr and those other platforms, because another good question to ask is, all right, the people that are working on my account, are they subs or are they full-time employees?
Sure.
Can you call them 24/7 to Lucille's point on the weekend, or do I have a line of them? Or is this someone where to them, I'm just another line on the invoice? I'm glad you brought that up. Two more topics I kind of wanted to cover is what are some of the changes we've been seeing in the marketing landscape over the past year or so, and what are maybe or longer than that, and some examples you've seen of companies or brands that have done a good job of standing out or adapting to changes?
Sure. So I think the biggest change that we've seen over this last year is companies acknowledging and siding on social issues. And it used to kind of be that you could stay out of that and you didn't need to have a dog in that fight because you just sold sneakers. And that is just not the case anymore. And I'm not necessarily saying you need to come out hard or you need to come out strong on every political issue. But if there is a charity or a social issue that you do get behind and stand behind, make sure that you sort of have if it's a good thing, which I'm assuming they all are, right? Like every social issue is a good thing, but make sure that you have like language behind it, what your company does to support that issue, almost like a crisis communications plan, but then also ways that you're showcasing and telling the world, because consumers now are looking to buy products and support companies that support and align on the same issues that they do. So if you are able to work some of those different like charities or nonprofits that you support into your messaging, into your social, into your branding, Tom's Shoes, I think, is a great example. Or Rothy's is another one, sustainability, planting trees, using fully recyclable materials. If that's sort of like what your thing is, I'm a woman-owned company, so folks supporting other women-owned businesses, women-owned women entrepreneurs, whatever those things are, like be prepared to talk about that and speak about that, and also be prepared with messaging in case things get bad in the news and you have a response for it. And I have seen so many times where people come up with a comment or a response that's like vanilla, and they're trying to sort of downplay it, or they say a lot of words without saying anything, and you are just going to get reamed. If you know what side you're on, whatever it is, make sure that you're willing to stand behind it and make sure that you have a plan in place to do that. So that would be sort of what I've been seeing over this past year with, just everything that's been happening with COVID and Black Lives Matter and all of that. So I would just make sure that you have a really strong position on those things, or are prepared for those things coming out, and how your company may be pulled into it intentionally or not.
Or stay out of it altogether unless you have a good stance to take. There's a few examples I could think of that obviously I won't name, but it's kind of like the Hippocratic Oats. First, do no harm.
Yes.
Yeah, I would add a little bit to that with kind of 2 points of first of all, if you do back something, understand what it is you're backing. Don't just donate money and throw a sticker up on your Facebook portal or whatever, and then, because they're going to come, and the people who are for that and against that, and whatever it is, there are people on both sides, and they're going to want an informed reason for why you support or don't support that. So don't just randomly, oh, look, that's the hot thing, everyone on Twitter's doing this, I'm going to jump in. Make a statement if you want to do that, but understand that doing that is making a statement, and you need to understand what statement it is you're making. In kind of a larger view, I think that kind of goes to a little bit what I was saying earlier, that even as things become more technical and more, I'll say complicated, for lack of a better term, word of mouth really still is what marketing is about at a lot of level. And whether that was, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, people standing out in front of the water cooler or the barbershop talking about, what their favorite type of car was. Well, now they're just on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, some social media, and everyone has an opinion. So, I mean, if you ask someone something, expect to get something. I saw a very good, I won't mention the name of the company, but I saw what I thought was a very good ad on, I think it was Facebook just a few days ago. And it was a video. It was actually a marketing company, and I watched the whole video, and I'm like, oh, that was pretty well done. I don't know if I agree with all their points, but that was pretty well done. And then I looked at the comments, and they were just getting completely obliterated. Every comment was negative, 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 and that's just part of it. They just let it sit there. There were no comments back. There was no communication. And if you're going to be on social is a two-way street. You can't just throw something up there and say, I'll come back and I'll run the metrics next week. You can't do that. It's a live, active beast, and you have to be participating, because if you're not, someone else is. The other person is still communicating. The other person is still interacting. And whether that's your customer, or frankly, whether that's your competition doing it better than you. Social is, they call it social for a reason. It's not a newspaper. You're not just sending out an ad to people. It's a communication, and you have to understand that it's a communication. Whether that's asking for a review on Google or wherever that is, you're going to get those reviews now. People like to do that. And you're going to get negative ones because that's what people do. You have to reply back to them. You have to have that conversation. Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. I understand what you're saying, but this was the reason, or, we'll do better. We are better than that. You have to understand how to take that criticism because it's going to come. It's absolutely going to come. And it's not a bad thing. It's a positive in a lot of times. If someone sees how you reacted to the criticism, you can turn that around and it can be turned into a positive.
Yes.
Absolutely.
The other big thing that I've sort of noticed over this past year, as far as like trends, are Facebook groups. There's been a huge rise in that. And so, if not every business is set up for that, like I'm not going to create a Facebook group for my clients, but there are a lot of businesses that it does make sense for, or a lot of different groups you can join. I'm in a lot of Facebook groups. Women in social media, women in marketing, not just women, but there's groups for every type of person. And so those are definitely on the rise. And depending on the type of business, there may be an ability to monetize that because you are getting a really great target audience of people who are actively seeking, cat lovers videos or whatever those things are. So kind of keeping an eye on that with Facebook's changes, or with rather Apple's changes with the iOS 14 update. That has impacted Facebook's ability to reach and measure the people that they're reaching. And so what Facebook wants to do is keep people on the platform, because the more they can keep people on the platform, the more they can actually measure and analyze what's happening. And so Facebook groups, I definitely think, will be something that we continue to see as a strong trend, because they're going to do whatever they can to help keep people on the platform, because that's the only, the really true known way that they can actually measure people and what they're doing and what actions they're taking. And all of that data, every click, every time you pause, every time you like, you scroll, you comment, that's data they're able to use to say, who is this person and how do they fit into X, Y, or Z target audience? So that would be something that I would kind of be on the lookout for, or be thinking about as you're making your marketing plans. Obviously video content with this year and everyone being home. I think, anything that's more engaging. So, coming up with a plan. I also think that people are more used to seeing people in more casual environments. And so not everything, and I think this is especially helpful for startup companies or entrepreneurs, folks that are just starting out, is it doesn't have to be perfect. Just like, in a way, you just want to get that video content out there. So it doesn't necessarily have to be this perfect, polished, you've got the teleprompter, the lighting is just right, kind of thing. Like, in some cases, just get your content out there to the world. It's so easy to take video now. I think people can be very scared of it. And, they kind of get that fear in their eyes when the camera hits them. But the more you do it, it's like riding a bike. The more you do it, the more you're in front of that camera, the easier it's going to become. And the more video content you're producing, the better that's going to be for your online presence.
And to piggyback onto that a little bit, there are many, many tools now that can make video specifically a lot easier than it used to be. There's the Biteable and lots of online resources where you can use stock photos and stock video. You can mix in your own video. They have designers that have already built layouts and colors and fades and crossfades and all that. So, that the quote unquote hard part's already been done. It's just a matter of getting your message out in front of them, your customer, and getting it out in a way that's not just kind of flat and boring. Like you still mentioned, this whole year and a half or whatever we've had now of Zoom and people not in the office and people on web cameras and all that. No one's wearing suits and ties, it seems like, anymore. That kind of level of casualness, it's not a bad thing. It makes everything a little bit more approachable, and a little bit simpler, and a little bit easier. And these tools are available, and they're free at some cases, and cheap if not. I mean, built into Facebook now, they have very good ad designers that are built directly into it. You can make slideshows with fades and crossfades and stuff without ever leaving Facebook. Twitter and LinkedIn are all a little behind, but they're coming also. So you don't necessarily need to, to mortgage the house to make ads. And that's something that's really developed a lot recently, especially on the video side. You think back 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, video was very, very expensive. And it's just not anymore. And that's actually one of those places where, I'll bring up Upwork and Fiverr, that kind of person again. That's a scenario that works very, very well. If you can take your iPhone, take your Android phone, shoot some raw footage, find someone on one of these outsourcing platforms and say, this is my messaging, here's the raw footage, make this pretty. And they can do that, and they can do that very affordably. And we're to the point now where, it's not going to look like Industrial Light and Magic made it, but that's fine. It's still going to get your message across, and it's going to do it better than you could do in your home office.
Yeah, to both your points, it's that sincerity of that user-generated content. People are used to it, and it's easier now, and it really gets that almost personal message across. And kind of to your point, Neil, of reviews, user-generated content is kind of like a video review of how much someone is enjoying that product. That it all kind of like just really meshes really well together. We're running up against our time limit here. Lucille Spahn, Neil Marr, Lucille from Blaze Digital, Neil from Learning Alliance Corporation. Thank you both so much for being a part of this. It's an absolute joy to have this talk with you all. Really enjoy discussing this stuff. I think there's some great content and great insights for our audience. So we appreciate it. And everyone else, enjoy the Veterans Florida Virtual Expo presented by Bank of America, and look forward to connecting with all of y'all soon.